Hi dear students, welcome to statistics class. This is our module 2, topic 4, basic concepts in sampling. So before we proceed, let's recall some terms that we have in the previous topics. Universe is the set of all entities under study. And then variable, we have learned previously that there is categorical and numerical variables. So remember, this is the attribute of interest observable on each entity in the universe. And population is the set of all possible values of the variable. We also have sample is the subset of the universe or the population. And remember that this sample must possess the characteristics of the populations. So it is also a group in a research study on which information is obtained. So that is the sample. And then, what is this sampling? So sampling is the process of selecting a sample. So it refers to the process of selecting individuals or sampling units to be included in the study. Sampling units, these are the units that receive your treatments. Okay? Especially for experimental researches. So this is the sampling units. And for social researches, they call it subjects, individuals, people. So that's the difference. And then, but still, the process of selecting is called sampling. So gathering data from a randomly selected sample of a larger area is called a sampling. Now, let's define as well some basic terms. Parameter is a descriptive measure of a population, as what we've learned in the previous topics. And statistics is a descriptive measure of the sample. Remember the sample mean? So that's also a statistics because it is a descriptive measure of the sample. So parameter, just like our population mean, so that is the parameter. And then inferential statistics, to recall, we have two types of statistics, right? We have the descriptive and the inferential. So remember that inferential statistics is concerned with making generalizations about parameters using statistics. It's just like you are concluding something, okay? So why do we use samples? Why? Of course, to reduce costs. For example, you will print a questionnaires for 1,000 people, a population of 1,000. For you to reduce costs, you just use samples and then print papers for only 500 people. So of course, you can reduce cost. So that's why we use samples, especially that they have the similar characteristics. So it's still scientific. You can still get a data or relevant idea or information from those people, from those samples, because they possess the same characteristics of the population. So it is to reduce costs. That's why we use samples. And then greater speed or timeliness. So for example, you will interview for 500 instead of 1,000. Of course, given the same speed or time, you can finish interviewing people for only 500 of them compared to 1,000, right? And then greater efficiency and accuracy, greater scope, and of course, convenience, necessity, and ethical considerations, especially for biology, for agriculture. Instead of getting a samples, especially from the endangered species, so it's not good, it's not ethical to get all of them. So you just get few and then study. So that's one of the reasons why do we use samples, and the process of selecting samples again is called a sampling. So there are three questions to be asked or three questions to be answered by a researcher or in a sampling procedure. You can see this when you do your research, so be it social or experimental. Who will be the respondents, or what is the sampling units? So how many respondents I'm talking about for social researches, and how they will be selected. So that's the three questions that should be placed or should be answered in your sampling procedure. Okay. Who will be, how many, and how they will be selected. This is in a sampling procedure. Then, there are two types of samples or sampling. We have the probability samples or probability sampling, or non-probability samples or non-probability sampling. So, what is this probability sampling? This means that samples are obtained using some objective chance of mechanism, thus involving randomization. This is the indicator that you have the probability samples because of this principle, randomization. Take note of this, randomization. They require the use of a complete listing of the elements of the universe called sampling frame. So of course you have the complete list of your population. So this is the probability sampling. Uh, for example, the sampling frame, you want to interview someone in a barangay, so you have to get the information from the secretary of the barangay. For example, in the students of CPAC, you will have a sampling frame and in the registrar and take the list of this. The list of the students. So that is the probability sampling. So in other words, everyone has a chance to be selected. And the probabilities of selection are known. For example, I will only choose 3 students out of 10. So the probabilities of selection, if I'm one of them, I will have the chance of 3 over 10. So the chance that I'll be selected is 3 over 10. So they will have an equal probabilities to be selected. And they are generally referred to as random samples. And they allow drawing of valid generalizations about the universe or population. So findings in that studies, you can form a generalizations about the population because you have a probability samples. So it is a process of members had an equal chance of being selected from the population. Lahat-lahat may chance na makuha. So that is the probability samples. And how about the non-probability samples? The samples are obtained haphazardly, selected purposively, or taken as volunteers, okay? And they should not be used for statistical inference. Again, this non-probability, they should not be used for statistical inference. For example, I have a non-probability samples, meaning I did not give everyone a chance to be selected. I just interviewed my friends and take their views about their life experiences here. So, my findings for that study, I cannot say that this is the life experiences of all CPAC students. No, you will only have the findings based on your sample, and you cannot say therefore or I concluded, so I generalize that the CPAC students are like this. So again, non-probability samples, they should not be used for statistical inference or for making generalizations about your populations. You will only be talking about your samples and not the population. They result from the use of judgment sampling, purposive sampling, and the like. So we will talk about the different non-probability samples or sampling method later. Now, let's talk about the methods of probability sampling. First, we have the SRS, to make it short, or they call it simple random sampling. So it is a process of selecting n, this is sample size, in the population via random numbers or through lottery. In your calculator there, you can generate random numbers there or through lottery. For example, in agriculture and biology students, I will write your name in a paper and for example, you are 30 and put it in a cup or in a basket. And then I will say, I will choose 20 of them to be to have a score of 5. So I will get 20 what did I say? So out of 30, for example, I will choose only 20. So I will pick only 20 papers and with a corresponding name. So that is through lottery or what else? And then random numbers. For example, each one of you has their own random numbers. And then I will say those who got the highest random numbers, the first 20 who got the highest random numbers, then I will select them as my samples. Then, of course, everyone had a chance to be selected. So that is the simple random sampling. And then the next we have the systematic sampling. So it is a process of selecting a kth element in the population until the desired number of subjects or respondents is attained. For example, in the 30 list of agriculture and biology students or 30 theology students or any students, I'll just say 30 students, CPAC students. And then I will say those in a third, every third students in the list or in the sampling frame will be my respondent. So 3, third, and then 6, and then 9, and then 12, they are my respondents. Every kth or every number or element, kth meaning third, fourth, so you can choose. So for example, in this problem, every third house, I will use them or I will interview them for some questions. So for example, third, first, second, and then third, I will select this house and then 1, 2, 3. So next is I will select this house or the family here. And then the third, 1, 2, 3. So I will select this house. So on. So that's the systematic sampling. Next is stratified sampling. From the word itself, strata, stratum, or grouping. So, for example, I will select the first year, second year, third year, fourth year. And so I will group them in each year level, and then I will get 10 from first year, 10 from second year, 10 from third year, and 10 from fourth year. So that is the stratified sampling. So how about the cluster sampling? It is a process of selecting clusters from a population which is very large or widely spread out over a wide geographical area. So they are just similar with stratified. It's just that cluster is very diverse and very wide, especially for example, the national data, the national survey, they use the cluster, for example, regional. So, and then at this area, I will interview someone here in this region, and then in the next region. So that is the cluster, or widely spread out over a wide geographical area. Okay, so that's the cluster sampling. So also like in informatics, especially the biology, they always use the GIS, geographical information system. So they use that. For example, this area, I will get some species here and then this here. So of course they use the very wide geographical area. So this is usually used, or this is also used in really different fields to, especially for a wide geographical area. So that is cluster sampling. have similarities with stratified. And then let's go to non-random sampling. Non-random sampling is a sampling procedure where samples selected in a deliberate manner with little or no attention to randomization. Again, remember this randomization. When I say I have a randomization process, that is random sampling. If there is none, then that is non-random sampling. This means that it does not give equal chances to every population unit to be selected as a sample, or also called non-probability samples. So that's the non-random sampling. What is this convenience sampling? One of the method of non-random sampling is convenience sampling. And it is a process of selecting a group of individuals who conveniently are available for study. For example, you go to the city and usually you see people giving out some questionnaires or giving out some coupons. So just convenience. Those people who will pass here, then they will be given that coupon. So that is just convenience sampling. Also, for social research, you just stay in the library and giving out some questionnaires for students who went in the library. Or for example, convenience sampling for those who are in your cottage or residence, and then they are my friends, so it's easy, it's convenient for me to interview them. So that's one of the convenience sampling. In other words, not all can have a chance to be selected. So what if they're not able to go in the library? What if they're not your friends? So you don't know them, so they don't have the chance to be selected as sample. So that's why it is called convenience sampling. Okay, let's proceed to the next non-random sampling method. We also have the purposive sampling, also called judgment sampling, and is a process of selecting based on judgment of researcher to select a sample. For example, I will choose this person because I think he had the experience of taking some some drugs, or I would like to interview this person because I think he had the experience to go abroad. I want to interview this person because I think he already went to some mountains. So just that is the one of the purposive sampling. You do your judgment. So I think this person had a lot of insecurities, then I will interview him or her. Maybe this person has a lot of a good perspective in life, then I will interview him. So that's the purposive sampling based on the researcher's judgment. And then how about the quota sampling? It's applied when an investigator survey collects information from an assigned number quota of individuals from one of several sample units fulfilling certain prescribed criteria or belonging to someone. So that is the quota. For example, you will reach 40 person, so you will interview some 40 people. So that's one of the quota sampling, like you called in a with the directory, and then you just interview anyone who is available to answer their phones. So that's one of the example of quota sampling. And then we have the snowball sampling. It is a technique in which one or more members of the population are located and used to lead the researchers to other members of the population. For example, you only know someone who have the experience of rape, or you know someone who have the experience of in a broken family, or you know someone in actually, or this snowball sampling is usually used in a very sensitive cases. For example, murder. For example, they're being raped, or the use of illegal drugs, or the use of some experience that are not publicized usually. So for example, you know only one, And then that person, could I ask you to bring me to other person who you think already, who also have the same experience like you? So that person or that interviewee would also lead you, oh, I have a friend like this because we belong to a certain organizations, a certain group, and he's also or she is also one of them. So for example, you are literature evangelist and you went to a different city or a different place, and then you would ask someone, do you know some of our Adventist brethren here? And then that one Adventist friend will say, oh, this Mr. and Mrs. is also an Adventist, so they'll be the one to point you to another person. So you can apply that usually in social research. Snowball sampling. And then the methods of collecting data. We have direct or interview method. It is a face-to-face encounter between the interviewer and the interviewee. So that is the direct or interview method, or indirect or questionnaire method. This method utilizes questionnaire to obtain data. So this is usually used in social researches, indirect or questionnaire. And then registration method. This method of gathering information is governed by laws. So especially in our government systems. That's the methods of collecting data. And observation method, usually in experimental researches, or I mean in social researches where they observe a certain phenomenon in its natural settings. So this method is used to data that are pertaining to behaviors of an individual or group of individual at the time of occurrence of a given situation are best obtained by observation. For example, how children reacts when placed in a certain room. And then you have the observation method. And then the experiment method is used to determine the cause and effect relationship of certain phenomena under controlled conditions. So from the word itself, experimental experiment method. So that's how you gather your data. So before we end this, let me remind you in the book of Ecclesiastes 8 verse 6, for there is a proper time and procedure for every delight when a man's trouble is heavy upon him. Always remember, if we have the sampling procedure in statistics in our research, remember this in our daily life, there's also a proper time and procedure. So God bless you and see you on the next module.